Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Today's question comes to us from W4FNP, and it is about a very old video, number 357, on how antenna traps work. This is a completely different question. He says, Dave, I'm curious, how or what configuration of a single wire end-fed half wave to put on my roof in a U configuration to get resonance on most bands. I live in an HOA, there's the big problem, okay, and am trying to put the antenna up on the peak of the roof incognito of the HOA patrol, yet still able to get out and hear. Currently I have a 49-to-1 balun up there with a wire approximately 100 feet in overall length in a U configuration and about 12 inches above the slate tile roof. That's a nice height. The slate is not thick enough to act like ground, although it is, technically stone. It is not going to act as a sink for your RF like a metal roof might. I can hear and believe the antenna is NVIS. Yeah, it's going to be that close to the ground for any band where you are less than about 0.2 wavelengths off the ground. So that's going to be much of the HF band. By the time you get up to 20, 17, 15, and 12, and 10, it starts to act more like a normal antenna. Okay, any ideas? Tried attic type antennas with no success. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is an end-fed half-wave dipole. Is still a dipole. Okay, that means that the length has to be a half wave on the lowest frequency that it will work. You've got 100 feet. That isn't a half wave for any of the ham bands. So you can lengthen it by about 32 feet and go for 80 meters, or you can shorten it to about 66 feet and go for 40 meters. If you do the 40-meter option, the thing should work reasonably well on 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters, and maybe 6. If you go for the 132-foot option, it should work on 80, 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10, and maybe 6. Okay? So I'd go for the longer wire if you can. Wire's cheap. Go down to Home Depot and get some wire down there. Get the stranded THHN insulated wire, and you can put that up there. If you don't have room, go for the 66 feet. Now, here's what you do. You cut it to a little long, okay? Then fold the part that you're not using back and wrap it back around the wire, okay? That way, if you need to lengthen the antenna, you can easily. Just unwrap that, make it a little bit longer, and so on. This will work even with insulated wire. I know, I've tried it, I've done the video, okay? Now, note that if it's insulated, the velocity factor is a tiny titch different. The insulated wire will be a titch shorter than an uninsulated wire, but I recommend the insulated wire. Get it in whatever color your roof is. And tile roofs are often red. If they are red, then get some red wire. If they are a lighter color or a gray or something like that, they do sell sort of a dark gray wire at Home Depot. We've used it to put previous antennas up. In fact, the antenna that I've got up right now is a ZS6BKW antenna that's long, but has a long string of matching stub of window line on there for that. And that uses that gray wire. I just bought a 500-foot spool because I can't help myself. I'm always building a new antenna just to try it out. By the way, the ZS6BKW that we put up works really well. So now the problem is you're right there. The near field of the antenna is all tangled up with your rafters and things like that. So the length of the wire may vary. So cut it to 66 feet or increase it to 132. And again, add 5 feet or so at the end so you can fold it back. And then start testing it and find out where the low SWR is. A great way to do that is if you have, for example, a nano VNA and know how to use it, you can set up the region that it tests 7.15 megahertz is the center of the 40-meter band. Set it up so that it covers a megahertz or so on each side of it. See where that dip is. And then go up and lengthen or shorten the antenna till you get that thing tuned right in on 7150. Then it should also fall within the 20, 15, and 10. If not, then you can lengthen that antenna a little bit, which will move it down and get it to tune in on the FT8 frequency, which is 7074. And then it will fall more in on the other bands. The only adjustment you have there is the length. Unfortunately, it adjusts all the bands at once and so on. The fact that it is so close to your roof may give you anomalous performance. Now, we've got to talk about the counterpoise for that end-fed half wave. In my case, and what I recommend, is that the coax that you connect to the 49-to-1 balun be a fair length, 20, 30 feet, before it comes around and hits ground at your lightning arrestor. When you screw that into your lightning arrestor, you have grounded that, and the outside of the coax acts as the counterpoise and should work pretty well. If you have a much shorter piece of coax, you may need to actually add a piece of wire 10 to 20 feet to the thumb screw that's on the 49-to-1 balun that gives you some place to connect to counterpoise. You can adjust the counterpoise for best results. Okay, so you've got lots of options, but right now you have an antenna that doesn't tune on anything. Okay, it's not a long wire. You don't feed a long wire with 49-to-1 balun. You have to have a tuner right at where the antenna begins. That means a remote tuner, which can be reasonably expensive, a few $100s. Okay. I like the idea of the end-fed half wave. Note, it doesn't come around and form a complete loop. It's a broken loop. It goes up, over, around, back until it reaches the right length. And that's where you go, okay? Now, if, for example, 132 feet hits the original, your box, then droop that away, hang it over the side of the house, do something to move it away. I mean, we are changing the antenna by putting it in kind of a square loop kind of thing. But dipoles are remarkably forgiving for what you can do with them and still have an effective dipole. So what you've got up there, go for either the 66 feet for the 40 meters, again, add 5 feet to wrap back, or the 132 foot with 5 feet, or 80 meters, which will give you more of the intermediate bands. Now, how well will it work? It's obviously a compromised antenna, okay, but it should work fairly well on 80 and 40 as you said, NVIS antenna. It will tend to transmit up. As you get on 40 meters, it'll come out a bit, but it still acts as an NVIS. Now note that the pattern, the elevation pattern for this is quite wide. So you will still get some radiation out in the direction of some relatively nearby DX. On 20 meters, and especially on 10 meters, you'll get more of a normal out like this. 20 meters has no significant ground wave, nor does anything higher. 40 meters has a bit of a ground wave. 80 meters has a reasonable ground wave, but mostly you're working by bouncing off the ionosphere and coming straight back down. Now, it says near vertical incidence. If you hit it vertically, it'll come right down on top of you. So it's got to be angled a little bit. But if you figure that you go off at even a 45-degree angle and it hits the ionosphere, comes down at a 45, you're still covering 200 to 300 miles. So you can get your whole state, get to the state EOC, get to the breakfast net that you want, and so on and so forth, and do all of those kinds of things. So I hope that helps answer your question. The basic thread through that is tune it either for 40 or 80 by adding length to that or shortening it. 100 foot is not resonant on a ham band, so that's not going to do you any good. Get it either 66 or 132. If you'd like to help support this channel, take a look at us on patreon.com. And until we next meet, 73.